Welcome, President Roberta Metsola, and to one of the highlights of our European Ideas Forum. Now for the audience, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that we have a president here. The bad news that we are very limited on time. So what we do is that we just go hit the road. I will be short and I will be giving floor to President Metsola. Also, we have already agreed that we treat on first basis. So I call President Roberta. So just to make it clear that there is no offense there. So let's go to the so Europe's future amid crisis. So there's still some left of 2025. So looking very active and eventful year behind, what are the main issues from 2025 which we should carry and take to 2026 to our future?
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for all the events that you organize and the possibility for us to come out of our normal sort of rooms and come up with ideas and reflect on what we've done. So 2025, we start every year saying this will be challenging. I think we can safely say 2026 will be challenging too, if not more. I would think that we should welcome the fact that the European Union has become more efficient and more agile in the way it works. We saw that in the European Parliament. I've been present in previous fora where we recognized the fact that we needed to overhaul our outdated rules in order for us to be faster, not at the expense of quality, but in terms of being able to respond to citizens' concerns, which were very clear last year when we were voted in during the European Parliament elections. And that means that we can now adopt legislation extremely quickly, push forward and make sure that we can deliver. And I look back in a positive way in terms of that, because set against the backdrop of the increased commitments, unprecedented, of our member states, who are also NATO countries, to step up in their defense expenditure, that has been coupled with defense funding that we go through in the European Parliament, and that will definitely be the highlight of what we continue to do in 2026. Overarchingly, security will remain our biggest challenge. The war in Ukraine is still raging. Russia still daily bombs Kiev and other Ukrainian cities. Civilians, men, women and children are dying every single day. So as we potentially enter the fifth winter of this war, this is what we need to keep at the very top of our agenda, which no doubt will be, as it has been over 2025, the pinnacle of what we discuss in the European Council next week. And I say this because I think there will be many countries around the world that would like us not to do this. And this is exactly why we should do the opposite. The European Union and the European Parliament, and I'm proud of the European Parliament that has massive majorities in support of Ukraine, has from the very first day said that Ukraine's security is Europe's security. We know what it means to let go of that, and we should be the last ones to in any way look away. The last thing I will say is that none of this should take away from our priorities on addressing our citizens' daily concerns. Whether it is to pay the bills at the end of the month, to grant affordable housing and make it possible that everybody has jobs that give them dignity. And this is a basic request that we should be able to answer, that perhaps for many years we didn't, which allowed also for more populist extremist forces to grow. And I belong to the moderate center of the European political spectrum, and it is that center that needs to deliver when we really answer citizens' tangible and I would say basic requests from us that we need to carry over from 2025 into 2026.
Thank you, Roberta. You underlined or mentioned Ukraine already a couple of times. Let's stay there. Something what you already said. Do you think that in Europe still is fully understood that Ukraine is part of European future security structures, that we really need them for the future? Is that reflecting the discussion?
Well, it is understood here. I just said what the Parliament's position is. wherever I go in the European Union, and I try to visit as many member states as possible in order to speak not only to political level but also young people that will, wherever we go, always ask about Ukraine, enlargement, what the future of Europe looks like, how we take decisions, how we can bridge the distance, even though I would counter that, but we can discuss this later. What worries me is that geographically the countries that are further away feel that politically this could be handled closer to Ukraine. So there is a big difference between the discourse in countries that have once been part of the Soviet Union, that were once behind the Berlin Wall, that were once occupied by Russia. I was in Finland last weekend to celebrate Independence Day. My husband, like you, is a Finn. Tommy, we all know that. But it's there's a very big distance in the discussion between what would happen in the countries like the Baltics, Poland, Romania, and the Nordics and others. And it's our responsibility to make it clear that the security of Ukraine means the security of all of us, and that the cynicism shown by Russia so far should teach us a lesson, because we've seen this happen in the past. Now, there is a peace plan on the table, and we're always hopeful and cautiously hopeful, I would say, optimistic that we would move, as President Zelensky has also said. But that is always hinged on the principle that nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. And I look forward to the next few days and weeks where we could see some direction that we could all take together.
The situation of war in Ukraine is closely linked to other maybe challenge. What we have is, of course, our relations to United States. Now, last week we all were shocked because the national security strategy, its statements. I think there's now discussion what direction to go. Is our strategy with the United States the correct one? What observations would you make on that? Should we alter?
I would be firm, I would be calm, and I would be self-confident. I spend a lot of time speaking to my US counterparts. We have a huge amount of interaction between the European Parliament and our colleagues in the Congress and Senate. And every member that comes back says that we had meaningful cooperation, that all underlined that the biggest allies in geopolitics in the world are the US and the European Union.
Yeah.
We could dispute that and we can argue about that, but there's no denying it. And denying it would, first of all, send the wrong message to our citizens, send the wrong message to our companies. We have a huge amount of companies that invest heavily and need to grow because there's a huge potential for growth in the US and vice versa. The discussion on trade is ongoing, also in the European Parliament. We need a trade agreement to enter into force, because it is that trade agreement which will give our citizens and businesses predictability and our markets stability that they need. At the same time, the European Union should also be self-confident in saying what it can do, what it should do better, but definitely never backing down from what to us is fundamental.
Yeah.
So yesterday in the Parliament we commemorated 25 years of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And we can go through those fundamental rights, right of freedom of expression, absolutely key to everything we do, that you are allowed to have association, that you are protected, that these are values that we all share, created in Europe, and that we defend everywhere in the world. And we're never going to be apologetic for that. Yeah. We legislate, we understand where things could be better, we're open and upfront about that. We could also have a big discussion as to how things could be better elsewhere. Yeah. But I think what we need to be is open, never close doors, use diplomacy, yes, but be forceful in an argument, and never be apologetic for the way that we do things.
Roberta, you already, yes, applause are allowed. Roberta, you already mentioned many times the issue of defense. Yesterday we had Commissioner Kubilius here. It was a very interesting discussion. Also, one signal what we got from United States last week is, at least when Reuters reported it, that there's an indication from Pentagon in diplomatic level, but that by 2027 in Europe we should, in NATO, have the responsibility of our conventional forces, which is of course a tall call. So my question: do you, looking now this, over period when we are speaking about defense in a European level cooperation, are you happy? Should we move forward quicker?
Happy is a big word.
Yes, exactly. So content, at least. Have we matched the ambitions?
Cautiously optimistic, hopefully. Yeah, we can use all sorts of adjectives. So I think we need to also admit and be open, as I just said, about the fact that we fell short for many years.
Yeah.
In this context, we would speak that we need to ramp up our defense expenditure, our readiness, our military capacity, how we go about enforcing peace through strength as a principle that underpins everything we do.
Yeah.
But for many years we did not do that. European Union governments looked away, postponed it, thought perhaps short-sightedly that there would always be someone else who would come to our rescue if things went wrong. And if the last year showed us is that that is not the case, and should not be the case if you have commitments that you need to comply with, such as in NATO, but also within the European Union in terms of those countries that are neutral, that are not members of NATO, that need to be part also of this conversation. Being safe and secure, which is also what our citizens want from us. So this is not just us saying it. Those who voted for us tell us that we want to make sure that Europe can stand on its own 2 feet. The phrase strategic autonomy takes on a new, let's say, flair in these days when we look at how we are going to ramp up, how are we going to make sure that this does not come at the expense of health, does not come at the expense of education. We were discussing what happens in other continents and other countries, but we are extremely proud of our social safety nets in the European Union and how that has meant that we keep our country safe and give equality of access and equality of opportunity, that we make sure that we protect our minorities, that you are able to have gender equality on this continent, and we are so proud of that. None of this should come at the expense of making sure our economies are more competitive, and that would automatically mean that we can invest more. Now, I would like to see a more streamlined defense industry. I would like to have more interoperability. I would like to be able to be more competitive and not only rely on equipment that needs to be bought from other countries, but can be manufactured here. I visited a few weeks ago a NATO base with Prime Minister Selina of Latvia, just outside Riga, and I was impressed by the ability that we have to protect, but at the same time also was a message, where are we on capacity?
Yes.
This is a discussion that is taking place in Germany as well. What are we going to do in order to make sure that our populations are better prepared? And this is not about scaremongering, this is not about warmongering, but about really being able to say what is needed. And there again, there is huge differences between some countries and others. North and South, for example. And I think it's time to have that conversation, especially with our citizens that have never been part of that conversation, and explaining that being in a position to defend and protect yourself means more security and more safety. Perhaps we didn't do that enough. And that is a realization that came abruptly in 2025, more than in the other previous years, because before we were focused on how we're going to help Ukraine, but 2025 really made us take an inward look at what we are doing in our systems for our populations. And I think it could be the responsible way to go. And we're seeing it happening in more and more countries. I would like to see it in every one.
Thank you, Roberta. I still have two questions, and one which you actually already mentioned about competitiveness, both in artificial intelligence and this decarbonization of economy. We seem to have in European Union this discussion. On the other hand, we have the regulation, protecting citizens, etc. On the other hand, these business concerns, as you mentioned, streamlining, etc. That you see in artificial intelligence discussion and decarbonization, the Green Deal, all that. So how can we combine that real, the competitiveness and at the same time, balancing with the, our regulatory protected efforts? How do you see that balance working out?
First of all, I think we did not. I remember during the Juncker Commission, there was a big discussion as to how we should avoid having the economy and climate as being completely detached from each other. Having a strong, diversified, investment-intensive and forward-driven economy should not come at the expense of our climate goals. And that is a balance that we have continued to find inside the European Parliament with the 2040 targets, for example, that we just adopted a couple of weeks ago. Now, where does that leave us with the not unjustified criticism that the regulation that we have voted on ourselves is heavy, it is sometimes unimplementable, it is unfeasible, and we need to be honest as to where it should be perhaps fixed. And that is why, as a parliament, we asked for simplification to be presented in terms of different types of legislation. They are currently being rolled out. We voted already on corporate sustainability. We will finalize the vote next week. And also reporting requirements. We have on the way environmental legislation, chemicals, wastewater. We will look at the car package that we are looking forward to in earnest. If there's one thing we need to have at the top of our agenda in 2026 is to save the European car industry, and that we should do also unapologetically, balanced and properly with a forward-looking vision rather than look back and see what we can do or should have done better. We have to do this in 2026. By 2027, we'll be too late. So this is a very realistic, pragmatic approach that the European Parliament is taking, but never by letting go of the fundamental values that we need to keep moving forward. So understanding where we could have done better, looking forward to new legislation, but realizing that we need to be more agile, more flexible. This also against the context of how we make sure that we increase the number of AI professionals, that today only 19% of people who graduate with a PhD in Europe in artificial intelligence stay in Europe. And that's a real number we need to deal with. And it's not only going to be dealt with through the AI Act. It is up to us how to make sure that we are better equipped. We are allowing our best minds in the world to start up, to scale up, to innovate. We need to be open for business and ideas. And where better can that be done than here? And again, we should be the ones saying it and not say we should have done this 10 years ago. It's 2025, soon 2026. This is the year to get it right.
Great, Roberta. I have a final question because we still have 2 minutes.
How many questions are you going to get?
No, but I have one, and this time
I'm losing my voice. That's going worse and worse.
Okay.
By the end, I'll be completely hooked.
I would be asking is that instead of what you think, what you feel about the future. You are not only president of the European Parliament, but you're also mother of 4 boys. By the way, well educated and charming. Just for the record.
Thank you. I agree.
But a couple of them are already outside house. Some of them are still inside. What do you, when you see that your children and the future and all these crises, what is your concern? How do you see their future? And for your voice, and be short,
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm proud of my boys. They are all very different, but they also ask me questions as to what their future will look like. And this is for my eldest, who is studying engineering, for my second, who wants to study economics and finance, and for the others who are still young, so still under my full control, are looking at Europe, this continent which they love, and they say when they're asked where they're from, that first and foremost they are European, and that's something I'm proud of. But I would like that to be spread to the whole young generation that is getting more, unfortunately, more skeptical and more cynical, and it's up to us to convince them that Europe is still the best place to live, to work, to build a family and a business. And this is something we should be proud of, and I want all our young people to think that.
Thank you, Madam President Roberta. Applause. Thank you so much for being here. And Alicia, floor is yours.